Choosing the wrong ceiling type can cost you comfort and money. Today we're going to explore, compare POP and plasterboard ceilings, and by the end you know exactly what to choose for each room in your home. So stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome to Asher and Gad channel, making Africa home again, one family at a time. Trust you're all doing well, wherever you are on the four corners of this planet, making gradual plans to make your dreams become a reality on the lovely continent that is Africa. Alright, so as usual, love for the love to all our Patreon and PayPal families and YouTube subscribers. We are producing a number of videos based on a number of questions we've had in the past 2 months. I've sort of taken my time to gather all the questions and the requests we've had over the past 2 months, and I'm taking some time out to produce a series of videos. Hopefully the consultancy will allow me to do so. Today is a brief video, and in this brief video I'm going to compare POP versus plasterboard ceilings. Over the years, going into most homes in Ghana, I would say that POP appears to be the dominant force when it comes to the ceiling types in the homes. But the question is it really the correct solution? Choosing the wrong ceiling type can cost you comfort and money. Today we're going to explore, compare POP and plasterboard ceilings, and by the end you know exactly what to choose for each room in your home. So stay tuned. I'm going to compare POP and plasterboard ceilings under the following categories. So the first thing really is, as I always like to start, is to define, because some people don't actually know what POP is. So the first question or first section is, what exactly is POP and plasterboard? Then I'll bring a table up to compare the two under various headings, like I did on the other tiles versus polished concrete video, in terms of cost, durability, etc, etc. Then we will go into the best ceiling type for each room, you know, whether it's your kitchen or your bedroom or your living room. You know, there are factors to consider. What is the best ceiling type for each room? Okay, then we'll have a final verdict. Obviously, comment below if you agree or disagree and what your own experiences have been. So let's get straight into it. So what exactly is POP? POP means plaster of Paris. So basically it's the same material that is used, you know, if you break your arm or break your leg, that white material that is used to cast as a casting on your broken limb until it heals. That is the same material that is used for the ceilings. It's called plaster of Paris, whereas the other ceiling type, plasterboard, is just what it means, plasterboard. It's also referred to as a gypsum board, GYPSUM, gypsum board. Okay, now the plaster of Paris is very good for decorative false ceilings, very good for that. It gives a smooth and stylish finish. Okay, you've seen various examples, you know, whereas plasterboard, as I said, is also called gypsum board. It's quicker to install, is durable, and tends to offer better insulation. Okay, now when I talk about insulation, what does that mean? Insulation is basically keeping the temperature of your room constant. So for example, if you're in a hot climate and you are obviously using air conditioning, you want the room to be cool for as long as possible. You don't want to be air conditioning and wasting energy, i.e. the cooling is escaping through the ceiling to the floor up, through the slab to the floor above. For example, if your ceiling type hasn't got good insulation properties, then some of the cooling air will be escaping through the ceiling to the level above, and you don't want that. You want the best insulation property for your ceiling, especially if you're in a hot climate. Now, but that insulation is not just down to, it's not just boils down to the cooling efficiency, but also there's also an element of of sound integrity also. When you're in a room, you're in a box, you know, and there are acoustic properties of the walls, of the floors, and of the ceiling, especially, for example, if you're building an apartment complex. What you don't want is, you know, a noisy person, a noisy family to impact your tenant next door or your tenant above them. So the insulation of the ceiling is also an important factor, because that also has a sound property to it. Okay, sound insulation is also important, especially where you are building a rented complex. Okay, all right, so I've got a table on your screen that is going to compare POP and plasterboard against a number of factors. Okay, hopefully you're seeing all the images on your screen, which are also helping for you to visualize the difference between the POP and the plasterboard. So in terms of cost, how do they compare? POP tends to be higher. That's because typically people normally put in POP and with more fanciful designs, whereas plasterboard is cheaper because it is typically for plain ceilings. It's typically used for plain ceilings. In terms of durability, this boils down to the installation. POP is durable, but it can crack if it's not cured well. It needs to be cured well. Whereas plasterboard, I would say, is more stable and you have less cracking when you have plasterboard. Design flexibility. POP is perfect for artistic ceilings. You know, if you want to really get artistic and want to look up and see something really beautiful, then POP is perfect for that, because you can really, you know, create what you really want from that. But plasterboard is best for the simple look. Best for the simple modern look, go for plasterboard. Installation, POP is slower, is much slower in terms of the installation, whereas plasterboard is much faster in comparison. Maintenance, I would say the POP would need repainting more often than the plasterboard. The plasterboard I would say is of a lower maintenance compared to POP. Thermal insulation, I would say that POP is fine, but not as good as plasterboard when it comes to thermal insulation. I would say the plasterboard has better thermal insulation properties for both hot and cold climates. Remember that if you're in a cold climate, you're heating the space, and you don't want the heat to be leaving the space through the ceiling too quickly or too readily. So the thermal insulation applies to both the hot and the cold climate, and plasterboard will win really when it comes to the thermal insulation properties. Okay. Now let's talk briefly about each room. What is the best ceiling type for each room? Starting with the living room, or the lounge, if you like to call it, or the living room. Actually, this is a residential setting, so it's a living room. I'm going to break this down into whether you're in a hot climate here in Africa or the Caribbean, or whether you're in a cold climate in UK or Scandinavia, or Russia, wherever you are. So for a hot climate, POP is good for a living room. It's good for a fanciful design. Okay, I would say POP is good. But for a cold climate, the plasterboard is probably better for the warmth and better for the insulation. Whereas the hot climate, POP is probably not a bad option. Obviously, the insulation is not as good as the plasterboard, but it's good enough for the hot climate, and you can get some nice, fanciful designs in your living room, as tends to be the case when I go from home to home in Ghana and also Nigeria. For the kitchen, whether it's a hot or cold climate, I would recommend plasterboard. The reason why I recommend plasterboard, because the plasterboard is more moisture resistant. As you know, as you're cooking in the kitchen, there's a lot of steam being generated, and that steam can bring about some stains over time on the ceiling. The plasterboard is more moisture resistant, and the plasterboard is easier to clean, guys. The plasterboard is easier to clean. So I would say for the kitchen, go for plasterboard. Okay. Now moving on to the bedrooms, hot versus cold climate. If it's a hot climate, I would say you could go either, but I would tend towards the plasterboard. for the hot climate because it keeps the room cooler. Remember I said that the plasterboard, the insulation properties of the plasterboard are slightly better than POP. So plasterboard in the bedroom would be a good choice. For a cold climate, POP is a good choice as well, because it gives a cozy and more luxurious feel if you're in a cold climate for the bedrooms. It is what it is there. The last room I would not want to consider is the bathroom. Remember the bathroom, what's the bathroom going to do? The bathroom is going to produce a lot of moisture when you're having a shower, a lot of condensation. So plasterboard wins the day for me there in the bathroom as well, because especially if you can give it a waterproof coating, then that could be the best for you. A waterproof coating of plasterboard in the bathroom would be the best. You know, if you want to go POP, that's fine as well. That it also works. But in terms of moisture resistance, plasterboard will be the way to go there as well.
Are you looking to build your dream home in Ghana? Or are you building already? Would you benefit from regular site visits to monitor your building and receive regular progress reports? Well, if that's the case, and that's you, look no further. Asher & Gad Consultancy at your service. We offer the following services: electrical design, construction monitoring inspections, site progress reports, consultation for all items MEP, witnessing of testing and commissioning, periodic snagging, vetting of specialist subcontractors. We also report site activities to you to hopefully help you spend your money efficiently and much, much more. Get in contact for your building needs. Details on the screen. Asher & Gad Consultancy, making Africa home again, one family at a time.
So, what is the verdict? What is the verdict? Now, what I would say, what do you guys prefer? Comment below. Let me know what you guys prefer, what your opinions are. But in terms of building experience and the properties of the various ceiling types, you can see that in hot climates, actually, plasterboard appears to be the clear winner in most of the rooms. Obviously, you can use POP in some rooms, but if you look at the properties overall, plasterboard is actually a clear winner in the hot climates, which is interesting. Very, very interesting. So guys, if you're building or renovating your home in a hot climate, please reconsider your ceiling type. Don't just go for the norm, because the norm may not necessarily be the best choice. Okay, in a colder climate, you can see that a mix of POP for decorative areas like the bedrooms and the living rooms is a good idea, and then plasterboard for more practical spaces like the kitchens and bathrooms where you will generate more moisture. Okay, where you're going to generate more moisture, then plasterboard is a clear winner because it's more moisture resistant and it's easier to clean. You know, in a kitchen and a bathroom. Just go to a home in a hot climate where there's POP in the kitchen, and after a while with the moisture, you see that you begin to see some stains. And yeah, yes, you can clean, but this plasterboard is easier to clean. Okay, so as I said, guys, let me know, comment below what you prefer, what ceiling type do you prefer, and then we can make it interactive in the comment section, and then just choose the right ceiling type for your home, for your climate, and for each room type. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. As usual, please like, share, subscribe, and follow for more.